Today on the Midnight List, we're going to look at the Mercedes Model S Barker Tourer from 1929 and find out whether or not it's right for you and what exactly is it doing in Gran Turismo. So the Model S is referring to the chassis of this vehicle, which was made by Mercedes and considered by most to be Mercedes' first sports car. The Barker, on the other hand, is referring to the body of the vehicle, which was built by a separate coach builder, and it was done as a commission build from Lord Earl Howell, who was a racer at the time. The car is powered by a supercharged inline 6, which produced just under 180 horsepower, which was huge for its day. After modifications, the car will get up to about 359 horsepower, and that is not huge compared to some of the other vehicles in the game, but the car, even though it looks pretty heavy, it's actually a very lightweight vehicle. And a lot of that is to do with the fact that when it was built, part of the concept was to create a lightweight body for the car, which is where Barker came in. Here we're running it at the Le Mans 700, which is a 30-minute endurance race in the game and is one of the races that people grind for a pretty big payout. The strategy I used on this was running Fuel Map 1 for the first 2 laps, Fuel Map 6 for the following 3, and then Fuel Map 1 again for the final 2 laps. And it was a pretty good run and a lot of fun to drive. I do have it set to easy to allow me to run some of these cars that aren't exactly as competitive as the rest of the pack, which gives me a little bit more variety. Let's jump ahead so we can see the end of the race. So as a one-off car with limited history, it kind of makes you wonder what it's doing in the game. And the answer, I believe, is that it won the 2017 Concours d'Elegance in Pebble Beach, and that's out of 204 rivals that entered the show. We see another car from 2018 that's in this game as well, which is the Alfa Romeo 8C, which sells for $20 million. So compared to that, this thing's a steal. This car was restored by its current owner and had at one point had the rear end changed from its boat back design to something that allowed the vehicle to hold spare tires. And this was either for weight distribution or just for endurance races, but they brought it back to its original design before entering the show. We ended up a little over 10 seconds in front of second place, which isn't bad for the age of the car. You can see the full video in my live videos, and for now let's head over to Tokyo and see how it competes on the list. This car was built at a time when there wasn't such a big distinction between race cars and road cars, so it was kind of a little bit of both, with maybe a little bit more leaning towards the race setup. The car retained its original colors when it was restored, and the blue is said to have come from a dress that was made of peacock feathers and was also Lord Howe's racing colors during his career. The car feels very light and you make up a lot of ground in the corners, but I feel like the car is the limiting factor in the equation when I'm racing it, whereas some of the more powerful cars, I'm definitely the thing holding them back. The car will get a little bit tail happy on you, but it's just fun to drive because it's such a long car. It doesn't really get out of hand. This car would be great as a candidate for engine swaps in the future, maybe with that Pagani motor, being this is a Mercedes. But at $13 million, it's probably difficult to have 2 of them in the garage. The game doesn't offer any aerodynamic options for the car, but this would look pretty terrible with a big spoiler sticking out of the back anyway, so that's not really a downside. We ended up with the front tires wearing around 10% and the rears around 15%, with the fuel running around 5 laps for completion. It's definitely not the most fuel efficient vehicle, and that's why when I ran it at Le Mans I did have to adjust the fuel maps as part of the strategy to try to win the race. Let me know in the comments if you've already purchased this car and if you like the way it drives. Also, I'm curious if you think the developers will continue to add these Pebble Beach Concours cars, and do you think we'll be seeing the 2019 winner in a future update? Now, although this car has a tachometer near the top of the wheel, it's difficult to see even in VR, and it stops at 4,000 RPM. And after modification, this car revs much higher than that, so you're going to end up not using the tach anyway and just shifting by ear. It looks like we're coming up to the final part of this lap, and we ended up finishing at 2 minutes 16 seconds, .932. That puts it back in 32nd place, just behind the Golf GTI. I'll have the setup that we used here in just a moment, so feel free to pause it and copy it down if you want to try it for yourself. Either way, I hope you guys enjoyed, and have a great night.